prior. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Michelle, Queens Commission and President for the 2015 year. Commission, how good?
Is that a prediction?
Yeah. Commissioner starting on my left, please announce yourself.
Commissioner Randino, Bronx County Republican. Simon Shmoon, Kings Republican.
John Flato, Kings County Democrat.
Alan Shulkin, Manhattan Democrat. Jose Roger, Queens Democrat. Michael Ryan, Executive Director.
Nina M. Crispino, Director of Personnel.
Pamela Perkins, Administrative Manager.
Georgia Gonzalez, Operations Manager.
Kenneth Moulton, Council Commissioner.
Okay, you have this agenda in front of you. Do you have anything to add?
Personnel matter.
Brooklyn, executive session. Okay. Okay, the minutes for September 8th, 2015. Everybody have a chance to read them?
And move to adopt.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. Okay, Michael J. Ryan.
Commissioners, I'm going to be asking for, on item 2B, a motion by the commissioners to convene a meeting of the Board of Canvassers for the sole purpose of delegating the borough committees to provisionally certify the election results for the September 10th, 2015 primary for the positions of delegate and alternate delegate to the judicial conventions or a member of the county committee. That's traditionally done because our calendar doesn't typically line up with the needs of the various party organizations throughout the city in order to be able to have their various conventions. So I'm going to ask for that motion and then for, I make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous.
And
I make the motion that we, the Board of Canvassers designate the county committees of the representative of the borough commissioners for the purposes of making any provisional certification for the votes if necessary prior to the next meeting.
I'll second that.
Just a little clarification. The borough commission will be the representatives of the Board of Canvassers for their particular borough. For that purpose.
right, and just so that we're clear, the election law is crystal clear on the fact that the larger group of commissioners can delegate to a smaller subgroup, and that's the purpose established. All right, so that will allow us, once the boroughs finish their work, to preliminarily or provisionally certify the election. Then what will end up happening, commissioners, will come back before the full board and do it. The other thing within that as well, I would also ask for authorization be given to utilize the signature stamps of all the commissioners to.
I'll add that to my motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Sorry. Motion carries.
All right, and then I guess we need a motion to adjourn the Board of Canvassers.
Move to adjourn the Board of Canvassers.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous.
All right, we are still in, as the election only occurred on September the 10th, we are still in the process of digesting all of the information with respect to last week's election. In any event, I would say that we had a relatively, throughout the day, relatively uneventful election day. We did have some problems, as we always do. There was a few poll sites that were open a little bit after 6 o'clock. In terms of reporting at the end of the night, we had a 99.12% of the PMDs were read on election night, which is a little bit higher than what it was in the general election. We were over 98%. And we're always going to have one or two stick failures, or sometimes, despite our training to the contrary, there are occasions where poll sites do not open one of the voting machines, in which case those sticks don't get read. So it wasn't a particularly problematic election, and quite frankly, we have a lot of information. I still have a bunch of reports to still go through. I mean, if commissioners have any questions, I'd like to take questions in that regard. But
Yeah, I just have a quick question.
Sure.
With respect to the uploading. That's still a pilot program, or has it been fully implemented now for all future elections?
the uploading of the election results from the poll sites has transitioned from a pilot to a full-blown process. Where we had a little bit of a slowdown, but we have some good news actually to report. One of the problems that we had is having space to house all of the tablets. And we've recently, as of last Friday, received approval from the mayor's office, which is going to come with commensurate funding, to acquire space in this building on the first floor. So if you come in the front door of the building and go down the escalator to the right, we're going to be able to get that space for the purposes of housing all of the tablets and the personnel associated with the programming necessary to do that. The significance of that is we needed to purchase the charging carts, has been reported, at various times, so that we could have a single point of program. Unlike the Droid devices, which had to be programmed individually per device, the Windows-based tablets are going to be able to be programmed and updated by a single program. And programming might not be the right word, because sometimes it's not full programming, but that's the way I say it. The text might say it differently. And so under those circumstances, we could have the charging carts, turn them all on, and do it and update it. Good word, good. Commissioner Michelle said update, that's probably the right word. On like an overnight, the way that you would do a server upgrade or some system work on the overnight, program it. It runs on the overnight, come in the next morning, check the dashboard, make sure all the devices are functioning properly, and we'll be able to deploy them directly out of 42 Broadway. So that's, I think, a significant step moving forward. The other thing is, I don't want to leave the impression that we're not using the tablets for a multitude of other things during the day. Poll site locator is accessible on them as well, so we have information clerks. They can assist the voters more easily on election day. We're also using the tablets, and everybody's on the same system. We're using the tablets to dispatch our text. God bless you. Our text from the field on election day, and that is dramatically decreasing our response times. For this election, we had a citywide average response time of about a half hour on scanners and about 35 minutes on BMDs citywide. Now, that obviously some boroughs were a little bit higher, some were a little bit lower, but that is for the commissioners that have been here longer, a half hour, 40 minutes to dispatch texts on a citywide average from dispatching to resolution is a lot better performance than we had been able to do in the past, and it is through the utilization of the technology as well as some of the other changes that were made over the course of time, assigning text to different zones that are helping to speed that process up as well.
Were there any sites that were unable to upload
Were there sites that were unable to upload the results?
from the site?
No. What we included with the tablets and what we purchased with the tablets was a little mini hotspot, and so that resolved any potential connectivity issues we might have had at the poll sites. Where we did have a little bit of an issue, and it slowed us down, and it really slowed us down about 20 minutes on election night, we had a simultaneous convergence of two separate problems. One was a defective switch here at the central office, which, as it was explained to me, essentially confused the system for a little bit of time. It was scattering the information and it wasn't streamlined. However, there were two basic things that are happening simultaneously. One is we're receiving all of the raw data in. Then the raw data has to be converted so that when you look at it on the screen, it all matches up and the right EDs and ADs and all of the candidate names are there. So the switch was preventing the information essentially from being dropped into the right boxes on the forward-facing side. But all of the information was in fact received and exactly where it needed to be within the system. So that ultimately wasn't as much of an issue. But it did cause a little bit of confusion because they were able to relatively quickly, I mean within 10 minutes, our tech staff was able to diagnose the switch issue, and it shut that switch off because there's sufficient redundancy in the system to overcome that. When we shut the switch off and that point of confusion was resolved, they were able to determine ultimately that there was a single line of, and I was told it's not code, but internal instruction within the system that was not configured exactly the way it needed to be. So what happened is the system will continue to try to upload the results, and then eventually after a series of internal error messages, not error messages that are forward-facing, but internal error messages within the system, it will then default to to a default configuration and move the information along. So that's where you saw that little bit of a slower processing of the results on election night, as opposed to what we saw in the general last year. So in the general we peaked between 9:20 and 9:30, and in this election we peaked between 9:40 and 9:50.
But 100% of the sites uploaded, which is very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And the great thing about it was, once they diagnosed the problem and fixed it, we went from 5% to 85% relatively instantaneously, which then shows us too that volume wasn't so much of an issue. And the way it's been explained to me is, we purchased a gig of bandwidth, we need 300 meg of bandwidth, and the reason we purchased a gig of bandwidth is because when you purchase a gig, you really only get 500 meg, and so we got 200 meg more than the 300 meg that we need, and so it seems like we're good.
I just wanted to say we're joined by Commissioner Fred Dumaine from Manhattan Republican. I just want to make a comment on that too. We received it by link, and it was working, but I also tried to do it by online with my computer, and I couldn't get it. Sometimes, it was frozen. It didn't work, but I got it, what was linked to me, I got it on my phone, but I couldn't get it on my computer. I know some of us had trouble.
Right, and as I had mentioned to both of you, I was having problems both mobily and with the computer.
And that's something we definitely have to look into, because we have, on election night, we set up a monitor here, right in the middle of the room for the public, and the chairs remain the same. So if anybody wanted to come and see, that didn't have access to a computer, you could come and, and look at it. That's the same website that everybody else would be accessing, and that did not appear to have any difficulties on election night. So, why there's this apparent interruption, depending on what location you're at, is something that we'll definitely take a look at.
Yeah, like I said, it was working fine on my phone, but then I went and tried it on my computer, and it didn't work.
And quite frankly, myself and Commissioner Raja, he was having some trouble. I sent him a couple of links that I was able to view on my phone, so I knew they were good links. There was no problem with the link. But then when you're sending it out, so I really don't know what the answer is, but it certainly is something that we have to discuss internally.
I would like to highlight an issue that I think is important for us to focus on going forward. On Election Day in Brooklyn, one of the significant items of feedback to our call centers had to do with voters thinking that there was a primary on an election in their community, only to find out that the poll was closed or there were no primaries. And part of it might have been linked to the notices, those mass notices that went out that did say September 10th. So we had the irony of, say, a voter who wanting to be conscientious goes out to vote with it on autopilot, perhaps almost, to a poll, only to find out that the poll is closed, and then calling in to find out, well, there's no primary in your community. So I think going forward, perhaps our the board's outreach committee and exec management could look at messaging and communications with voters, because we're on the front end of a cycle where we're gonna have 4 elections next
Right.
year. Where I think we would wanna sort out, figure out.
Yeah, I know, my
Tackle
view,
that issue.
you can confirm it, but isn't it one of the problems is by state law, we have to send out something 45 days before an election, so we don't know where the primaries are?
We have to send out our annual notice in the first week of August, which is what we do, and we don't have an unlimited budget to do mailings. The other problem that we have is, we have to send everything out by first-class mail. And so there is a significant cost associated when you have 4.3 million voters and you have to send everything out by first-class mail and the printing. But while I applaud the diligence of the voters that read the outside of the information notice that indicated what the potential primary date would be, those same voters did not open the book because one of the bullet points in there clearly states that you may not have a primary election, since, and at the time that we go to print on these, we have no way of knowing specifically what contests may, there could be legal challenges, somebody could fold off, somebody who you think might be on the ballot could end up not being on the ballot by election day. So it's clear in the voter information notice that you have to check either our website or call to, there is a certain amount of personal responsibility that comes along with the voting process as well.
What about the ads that we put in the newspapers? Can we include some kind of language in
Or
there?
PSAs.
Indicating that you may not have an election on this date and refer them back to our website? I'm not sure if it does. It does.
All right. According to Ms. Vasquez, that is contained in our legal notices as well. Look, it's a vexing problem. Certainly we're open to suggestions and anything that we can do to improve the process without, breaking the bank. I think, people will be welcome, open to, I should say. But I don't want to leave the impression that we just leave it completely to the voter. We do tell them that there is an issue.
Okay.
I think Ms. Gray wants to be heard.
Catherine Gray,
Yes.
poll site coordinator for PS 321 in Brooklyn. And I can give you an example. At the rainy day, I had 3 very mad voters who trumped a third of the mile up the hill, Park Slope, to vote at my site because their poll site was closed. Okay, yes, it is the voters' right, it's responsibility to find out if there's a contest. But I think there's a very simple solution. You have a mailing list of all poll sites that you use for the general election, and you send them out. I think there's nothing wrong with writing one letter to the principal or the head of the community saying, there will be no contest at your poll site this day, have a happy primary day. Because like the school, the principal and the custodian.
I'm going to stop you right there and I'll tell you why.
No, just let me finish.
You were asking
Let
about.
me finish.
I want to respond to what you said.
Yes.
Because we send out a letter in advance, 6 weeks in advance of every election. We send out letters to the custodian and to the principal of every school, which has an entire packet of what they should expect on election day. Now, if they don't get that packet, they don't have an election. And that's not something that we can ultimately control. And I got to tell you, we have a finite amount of resources. And I know it sounds like it's very easy, oh, just send a letter. But there's a lot of poll sites and a lot of people, and quite frankly, the voters bear responsibility. If you don't know you have a contest in your area, what are you going to vote for?
I agree.
So-
I'm a League of Women Voters who believes in
mean-
education of the voters. However, let me tell you, when you get 3 voters that are so angry, that take up a lot of your time trying to be a coordinator of your poll site, it would be nice that the principal would have gotten a letter saying, no elections today. She could have told the staff, the security officer could have told those voters you didn't have a contest today. I mean, I used the tablet to show these voters that they had no contest from the poll, from the BOE, so I
It's a good use
appreciate.
of the tablet, by the way.
Yes. Yes, we use it for a lot of different things,
Right.
not so much for checking addresses. But okay, so that was one major issue that
yes, right.
consumed a lot of my time that I didn't.
I was told
like.
by my staff, we did notify the principals that they didn't have an election. Is that not correct?
Facilities knows which schools are active and which
They know,
The schools know which
Yeah.
schools are active and one.
because
not.
we're only coordinating with the schools that actually have a primary.
Right, but I was told they actually get a telephone call telling them they have no election.
That may be happening, I don't know if that's happening consistently across the board citywide, maybe it is. But in terms of written notification, we notify those sites that have an election, and the ones that don't get a packet don't have an election. Now, that is certainly something that we can bring up, because we meet regularly with the DOE, but keep in mind that we have 1,250 poll sites and the DOE has a little over 700. That would still then mean that we have, potentially.
Maybe 300
You
letters
know,
to write.
Well, it's not the 300 letters to write, it's a question of having consistent messaging, right? Because that means that we have, almost 500 sites that we don't have a single point of contact for. So it's none of this stuff that seems so easy from the outside looking in is quite so easy from the inside looking out. When we have the DOE, we have a single point of contact, we are able to communicate directly with them, but they're not all our poll sites. They're about a little more than 2/3, right? So then that means we have other private sites and other government sites that we have to coordinate with, and we do our best to do that. But I'm not necessarily in favor of things that are going to increase the expense of putting on elections just for the sake of it would be nice. Now, maybe after a more full conversation beyond, today over the course of time, it's something that, we can come to some resolution on. But I will say that a significant effort is made to make sure that the voters are as fully informed as they can be.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I want to make one comment about the tablet. We had great use of the tablet all day long. Our tablet was fully charged, our hotspot was fully charged. When we went to put the sticks in, fine, and it wouldn't connect at 9:15.
That wasn't a connection issue. It wasn't a connection issue
What
from
was
your
it?
end. It was the switching issue
That we
and
had here.
that I had just explained. What was
But-
happening
But
is,
the tablet said not connected.
I understand,
Is that what
the
message was?
forward-facing message. What I'm saying is, the forward-facing message that you got was because there was if you don't
A
get
backlog?
confirmation back, if your device doesn't get confirmation back,
it's not connected.
it'll keep trying to pull, the server. And because of the switch and the configuration direction that was within the system, it caused a backlog. So basically what you confronted, Ms. Gray, was a traffic jam for all intents and purposes. But we were able to confirm later in the night when our tech folks reviewed the data,
Yeah.
it wasn't a hardware or a software issue on the tablet side. It was because
That was
the
something.
tablet wasn't receiving confirmation from here that the data was received, and it won't receive that confirmation until the loop is closed. So we actually had the data, but because we weren't making the connection between the forward-facing side of the website, it wasn't closing the loop. And so it's gonna keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. And in some cases, it went to the default setting that I spoke about earlier, but in some cases, it didn't because of the switching issue was causing the system to be confused. Once that switch was shut off, that issue stopped, which was about 9:45.
Yeah, I didn't realize, I thought it was an internal thing, and it was our hotspot that was.
Yep, no,
acting up.
and I appreciate that, and we discussed that night about what we can include in instructions and information so that poll workers and coordinators won't be confused by that message, because I could see how you would think it
We were
was
walking the
the hotspot.
hotspot all over the
Yeah,
building.
no, I could see how that would cause that problem. Now, fortunately, it only lasted about 20 minutes ultimately from our end, but I'm sure from your end it was probably closer to 45.
I think we finally were able to transmit at 10 to 10.
Yeah, that's where I had about 9:47, so it was probably like a 45-minute issue on your end. On our end, from the time of the detection of the issue to resolution was about 20-25 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, we totally could have closed at 9:20 if
Right.
that hadn't slowed us down.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, I'm going to ask now that you recognized Mr. Eddie Cuesta of Dominicanos USA, and I believe he has a brief presentation to make to us. Mr. Cuesta.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Eric Cuesta, and I am the New York Director for Dominicanos USA. Dominicanos USA is an organization, non-for-profit organization, non-partisan, that was established about a year and a half. It was established out of Ostos Community College. We're now located at 149th Street and 3rd Avenue. In the last year and a half, we have been able to register up to today more than 70,000 New Yorkers, basically in the North Manhattan community and the Bronx. We've been very diligent working now in Brooklyn and Corona, Queens, and hopefully we'll go into Staten Island. I just want to say that our efforts has been very unique because we have been able to educate our community in terms of the importance of really participating in the electoral process. And one of the things that I want to leave with the Commissioner is that there is a strong need for educational in terms of especially new Americans that are becoming American citizens, the backbone of this city. So it's very important, and at the same time I just want to add that today we are bringing this afternoon 2,246 registrations. And I want to, at the same time, thank the voter registration department because they were being very helpful with us in terms of providing us the blank forms going to Brooklyn. And we also want to be indicating that in the next month, we're going to be meeting with Mr. Ryan or somebody from his department because we have been able, throughout our work in the last year and a half, to reconcile close to 60,000 registrations with our data analyst, which is Catalyst out of Washington, D.C. And we have some findings that we'd like to share with the department in terms of how we could go ahead and fix, you know, some of the problems that we have found in terms of addresses, changes, names. So it's very, very important because that's something that we take very, very responsible in terms of making sure that everyone that we register is able to, come out and find their poll sites. We also do through a program, we do 20% of the registrations that we receive through a very state-of-the-art technology that we have developed, where we do calls just to make sure that all the, the persons, we are here to the strict voter registration guidelines. And I just want to say that it's very important in terms of what you mentioned about the poll site locators. We were able in the last year in the 3 elections to play a very important role in terms of working at some of the poll sites that were closed. I'm here just to commend that it's very important for community organizations to work with the Board of Elections. And I think if you were able to send out that type of information in the colleges, it would be very helpful. And lastly and not least, I would like to say that it's so important for the board itself and the commissioner to send out a message, perhaps a press release, to make sure that New York City become #1 in voter registration on National Voter Registration Day next week, which is so important. And hopefully we have participated and we'll expect to participate also next week.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for your hard work and your organization's hard work, but I have a favor to ask
Yes.
you. A lot of the organizations such as yours that go out and do a tremendous amount of registrations, like to hold them until the end so that they can file them at one time and make a big splash. My request to you is when you get them, give them to us so that we don't get killed at the last week of registrations where we then have to input in presidential election years, it's over 100,000 new registrants in a week because all many of the organizations and good government organizations that do this like to come in with a big splash and say, here's 25,000 registrations. The problem is that everybody likes to do that, and we get killed. So you can still make the same statement because you got the same number of registrations, but please get them to us as soon as you can so that we don't have a tremendous backlog. And next year, it's particularly crucial because for some reason in presidential years, people like to vote and they forgot they may have moved, and that's the impetus for a registration. So if in the continuance of your good work, please try and get them into us as soon as you can.
Yes, I appreciate. I just want to add that for our track record on a weekly basis, we come and visit the Board of Elections, and we bring every week 12 to 1,500 registrations on a weekly basis. And these registrations, if you look at the date, you could see that they're very current.
Thank you.
We understand.
Thank you.
But it's well accepted.
That's two organizations working together.
That's it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Mr. Cuesta, I believe that you were saving the best for last when you're going into Staten Island after the other 4 boroughs, is that true?
Yes.
That's okay.
Well, we're still getting, if we get the breakdown that we provide every, it's a little harder for us getting into the Bronx. But we are finding a lot of registration in the Sunset Park areas of Brooklyn. So,
All right, thank
5
you.
boroughs. Thank you, Commissioner.
All right.
Anything else?
Yeah, just one quick question. Have we been able to finalize the ballot committee review meeting? There was an email going around about the 17th, and Commissioner Michelle and I have both indicated that we could do a video conference with any of the other commissioners.
I don't know that that's been finalized
No,
amongst
we're
the
waiting
other.
for the Staten Island Commission
Yeah.
to confirm.
Staten Island Commission?
Yeah, they're available.
They're both
I know
other two on
Commissioner
ballot.
Guastella did send an email today that she'd be back in town tomorrow. I believe she's away, and I don't know the status of Commissioner Castellino.
I only bring it to the attention because I know some members from the community want to sit in on some of these meetings.
Right, okay.
It'll be here.
Well, no, yeah, I'm sure part of it will be here. I know Commissioner Michelle and I can we can do it via video conferencing in Queens.
As soon as we finalize the date, we'll post the notice.
Thank you.
Any other business? Want to go into executive session? Personnel? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and commissioners, thank you for hearing me. My name is Judy Richheimer. I was a candidate in last week's election, and I have also, throughout the last 5-8 years, worked several times as an election day monitor on those election days when I was not running. So I have 4 observations that I want to go through quickly. Difficulties that I encountered both during the election and post-election. First, when I went to vote, I had not been informed, I had not received a postcard that my ED changed. And I went to my usual polling place. There were 2 lists. There was a master list, and then there was some other kind of ED locator, and they were not reconciled. They didn't agree with each other. So finally, the poll people sent me to where, in fact, my new ED was. And just parenthetically, I'll say that my old ED, the old poll site, was maybe 3 blocks from my house, whereas this new one is a good 5 or 6 blocks from my house. It's fine with me, I can stand that. But I later found out that I lost a few votes because, as was pointed out prior, it was a very rainy day, and people would go to one poll site, discover that, because again I discovered that other people hadn't gotten their postcards either, that they would have to do essentially a 10-block walk then from old poll site to new poll site, and they couldn't do it in the rain. So I got to the new poll site, and I encountered a problem that I have reported on over and over again when I was a monitor. Namely, this new poll site, Bayard Rustin High School, is one of several poll sites where the lighting is really too dim, especially where you have the little privacy booths. And combine that with the fact that the print is teeny, teeny, tiny. I had a hard time finding my own name on this ballot. So this is a problem that goes back that I've been observing as a monitor for 5 to 8 years. I don't know if anything can be done about it. Incidentally, my original poll site, lighting perfect, but there's romantic lighting at the Bayard Rustin High School for some reason, and it does create a difficulty for those of us who are older than springtime, squinting at these teeny little names. On the ballot, now I don't know if this would come into a federal or state area and your hands may be tied in terms of doing something about this, but I was part of a slate, and then there was a slate above us. There was scant a demarcation between the two slates running in a vertical fashion. Now maybe you have to keep the print very small because later on, other elections, other ballots, everything will be squeezed in for presidential, gubernatorial, etc. But I wish something could be done, either in terms of the lighting or in terms of the print size, to make it more accessible to be read. Finally, on Election Day, when I took my ballot to the poll workers and I said, do you think that this is blacked in enough to be read? And they looked at it, very nice young women, and they said, yes, but you have to vote for, and she mentioned X number. And I said, no, you do not. And have you been telling people that all day? And it turned out that yes, she had. And people can vote up to a certain number. I was running for judicial delegate. You can vote up to a certain number and no more. But she had clearly said to me that I had needed to vote for this specific number or the machine would not read it, that it would possibly spit it back or it wouldn't read it. So she was confused on that score, and a little more education was in order, and I explained it to her. She was bright and amenable, but somehow in her class, that message hadn't got through. Finally, post-election, I won provisionally by 1 vote. And then I got conflicting information about what would happen at the convention on September 24th. One day I learned that both I and the person right behind me, obviously right behind me, that unless on Friday either of us shot way ahead and had a 10-vote spread, we would both be disqualified. Then yesterday I spoke to Mr. Raphael Savino, who was, by the way, extremely kind and helpful. Great guy. Too bad he's a Republican. But he was really helpful, and he told me to the best of his knowledge, but we left, it was late in the day and we had to leave the conversation somewhat at an ambiguous point, but to the best of his knowledge, that if I held on to my lead, even 1 point, on Friday, when you start opening up the absentee ballots, etc., that I would still be the winner. But because, as I said, Mr. Savino and I had to conclude the conversation, it was toward the end of the day, he was not able to get a final reading on this. I would like to say, so I see someone would like to respond to that.
I think the answer is, it's the rules of the Democratic Convention are the ones that are going to justify it. And if they are anti-democratic and don't want to have winning candidates be able to vote for judges, that's up to the Democrats to decide that.
I was left very uncertain as to which court would be the one of final appeal. And you're saying that, well, Do you, just factually, do you know?
It's the party rules.
And do you know in fact what the party rule is? Can somebody, can someone confirm that for me?
I have them upstairs, I mean, you know.
New York County Democrat.
New York County Democratic Party rules.
The New York Democratic Party rules would be what you have to follow. We have the bylaws upstairs, but I think where there was some conflicting information that you may have got was last year on September 4, 2014, which was then adopted into a formal written procedure, 14.0. It states clearly is the board will not conduct such manual recanvass if the contest is for the offices of delegates or alternate delegates. And so, because of that, the margin of victory of being less than 10 votes or 0.5%, where the total number of votes cast is less than 1 million, doesn't apply. So if the votes end up being in your favor and your party rules are such as they are, then you'll be fine. So that was a relatively recent change in the rules, and perhaps the information that you got was from somebody who was quoting the old rule, not the new rule, because we used to do a recanvass for delegates and alternate delegates to conventions, but since last September 4th, as codified in October, that no longer applies. So that hopefully that clears up.
Well, thank you very much, but not entirely, because you did say that you needed to check my party's rule book. And I'm sorry, I can't read your name.
My name is Michael Ryan.
Mr. Ryan?
Right.
Yes.
I didn't say I needed to.
No, right. We don't have to check the rule. Our rule is that we don't have to do an annual recount
That I
when it's
understand.
that close.
Yeah.
So whatever your party rules are, when the race is that close, who won is all up to them, not up to us.
So what's going to happen, just so you understand, is
Certainly.
if you're still up by one, when they do the preliminary certification, what'll happen is the borough office will advise the borough committee of commissioners, actually of the board of canvassers, that this is the preliminary results. Those preliminary results will be authorized for release by the borough committee.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's up to the local parties how they act once we impart the information. But clearly, the complete certification will not be finished in time for the various judicial conventions or party conventions that are going on. It's a problem that we have every single time we have judicial conventions and we have party conventions, because we can't finish our work in time for them to do their meetings. They're holding their meetings a little too close to our time.
By
but that's their
statute,
business.
by
By
statute.
statute, right,
By law.
yeah, but that's, you know, so it's a little quirk in the election calendar, and we do our best to overcome it, and the way that we overcome it is we preliminarily certify so that the parties can do their business.
So, but you had a possible recollection, or you're not sure, that my party's county rule may be that they need to see that a certified 10-vote spread in order to, but you're not sure of
I
that.
have.
Should I be contacting
No,
Mr.
I-
Wright's
I
office?
can make,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah,
He's the chairman
He's the
of
chairman.
New York County Democratic.
Yeah, and there's a law chair, and his office could refer you to the Democratic law chair.
I believe the law, I believe his
It's
lawyer is
Janine
Janine Johnson.
Johnson.
Janine Johnson,
I
yeah.
give you a telephone number afterwards.
Thank you.
And to make it clear, I have no recollection of the Manhattan rules or any of the other county rules.
I see.
I have a tough enough time running the Board of Elections.
So could you, very quickly, if you could speak to my other points, poor lighting,
Sure.
just some kind of shortfall in sending out postcards, decisions to put people.
I got, I wrote them all down.
Terrific.
I got it.
You're
So
great,
we
thank
can-
you, thank you.
We can run through it. The ED issue should have been contained in your voter information notice, the one that you received in the early part of August, unless there was a poll site change beyond that, and there should not have been, likely that there wasn't, in which case it would have reflected on the front cover of the voter information notice in bold letters that your poll site had changed. So if that should have been on there. So that's one issue. The lighting issue, we review the notes from the coordinators after every election, and we have a contract for temporary lighting and fans. So if there's a particular issue with poll sites not having sufficient lighting, we can do that in an auxiliary fashion with rental equipment.
And privacy groups also contain their own lighting.
Privacy
Right.
needs to have its own.
And
They're
the
not
can also
strong
be
enough.
accessed.
Right, and the font,
I have a witness.
I think we were at 12-point font this election, if my memory serves me correctly, which would put us at the font size for a regular standard business letter. No, where were we, 10?
For Manhattan, it was 8.
Oh, it was 8?
Yeah.
All right.
The long slate of delegates in Oakland.
Right, so then there was the complexity of the
Yeah.
ballot, and we were a 19-inch ballot in Manhattan?
Yes.
Yeah, so we had a 19-inch ballot, which is the longest one we can use that will still work when you inclusive of the stub, so we start to run out of room. So we apologize for that, but I guess the complexity of the ballot in Manhattan made it difficult.
And they do have magnifying glasses in every booth, so you can
Right.
magnify.
And you could look at the ballot, and you could use the ballot marking devices as well, which would allow you to, if you put your ballot into the ballot marking device, you can, essentially zoom in and magnify it up to the, whatever size you want to look at.
And a decision to move a poll from a place where tenants would be walking about 3 blocks versus walking about 6 blocks. You have 2 poll sites
We would have-
long-standing.
what
How did that work
What
out?
we would have to do is that you would have to give us the poll sites, and there's a lot of reasons why poll sites are moved. Could be because of handicap, and it could be a lot of reasons why. There might have been construction at it. So if you can, we can get the poll sites, and then we can give you a better answer on why. It was
To whom should I give that?
That's right there.
Ms.
I'll help you on the side.
Thank you
Okay?
very much.
Thank you for,
Thank
thank you. Any further business? Go into executive session?
Personnel,
Huh? Personnel?
One, Brooklyn personnel.
Brooklyn personnel. Okay. I'm sorry. Our next meeting will be, if nobody's here, what is it, next week is? The next meeting scheduled at 1:30 on the 22nd. We're going into executive session for personnel in Brooklyn.
For my kid.
No, you'll enjoy it.
No, I'm not gonna.
Are we on? Okay. We on. I have my phone in front of me.
Yes, there was one item from executive session. Betty Ann Canizio Akil, Deputy Chief Clerk from Brooklyn, was granted 210 hours of advanced sick leave. As of today, Ms. Akil's agency start date is June 1st, 2014, so personnel and payroll should be guided accordingly.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone. See you next week, 1:30.